Welcome to some new r/malicious compliance stories, where people comply to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. The first story is called Festival Tokens. A couple of years ago, I was attending a music festival where you had to buy tokens in order to exchange them for drinks. They would charge you an additional token for the reusable cup they would serve you the drink in. To encourage people not to throw them everywhere, you could bring back the cups to get back money equivalent to 1 token. At the end of the day, I wanted to leave, but I still had about 10 tokens left. I went directly to the stand where they sold them to exchange them back to money. After a short queue, when it was my turn, I showed my 10 tokens and was told they didn't exchange the tokens back into money, only the cups. I tried to argue with the person working there, but they told me it was definitely not possible. I told them that it was alright and that I'll be back in a minute. I then proceeded to the bar and asked for 10 empty cups in exchange for my 10 tokens. They looked at me strangely, but immediately agreed to the exchange. I then went back to the stand where they sold the tokens, especially choosing the same queue I was in before. After another short wait, I was in front of the same employee. They looked at me. I showed them the stack of 10 clean cups. They looked at the cups. Then they looked back at me. Okay, here's your money. The next story is called Cool Family. This happened a while back, maybe 3 to 4 years. Jack is roughly 28 and still living with his parents, but he pays their bills: electricity, water, internet, etc. This is a big 2-story house, so the bill is big too. His sister, 24, had left the house by then and gotten married to a guy that makes good money. She had taken credit for paying the bills and convinced their parents to kick him out because he is a shut-in loser because none of them understood his job. The parents are like those stereotypical teens in those cliché high school movies. Basically, they look down on nerds and think people who study hard are uncool. That type of thing. They kept that mentality even after growing up and having kids. So they always looked down on Jack for being nerdy and favorited his sister because she was pretty and popular in high school. But Jack didn't really care, because he had friends he cared about and he connected more with his relatives. So they all confront Jack. After badmouthing him about how he stays in his room mostly and how his sister, her husband and child need the space, told him he has till the end of the month to leave. This was done close to the first week. Jack didn't say a word, he just nodded and left by the end of that week and moved 3 cities away to a city closer to his other relatives. 2 months go by and his sister calls him, asking why this month's bills weren't paid. Apparently, the lights and water had been shut off. He tells her that she should have paid them, since she was allegedly paying them before. About a week goes by, and he gets a call from his parents. They said that his sister confessed everything, and how he can come back and have his old room back, so long as he kept helping them pay the bills. He refused. He's enjoying living by himself now, and he can focus on his work more because he's away from them. Afterward, he blocked their numbers, and now they have to pay for it themselves. And he doesn't have to talk to them anymore, because they are no longer invited to family gatherings. The last story is called Do What I Tell You to Do. This tale starts all the way back in 2013 and involves my time working at a call center at the 4th largest national cellular carrier. For a little bit of context about Canadian telecommunications and specifically cell phone services. Canada is the 2nd largest nation on Earth by landmass, with one of the lowest population densities. The federal government has some strict laws about foreign ownership and financing of telecommunications. As a result of this, cell phone plans are very expensive. The only companies that offer service are already established large companies with the resources to purchase spectrum and set up infrastructure. My employer was a newcomer to the market and was trying to make a splash by offering lower price services on the recently auctioned off AWS spectrum. The expensive cell phone plans that were offered in Canada were a real hot button issue. Such a hot button that in the 2011 federal election, all of the major political parties campaigned with the promise to make services better and lower prices. The result of this election was that in 2013, the Canadian Radio and Television Commission revised a bunch of the laws that regulated cell phone providers, specifically cell phone contracts. The new wireless code made a bunch of changes. The most important were that cell phone contracts were required to be written in plain English, instead of legalese. Any service advertised as unlimited cannot have an overage charge, by law. These new regulations were a very big deal at the time. Employees at the call center I worked at were required to sit through multiple training sessions and take tests about this to make sure we knew and understood the new laws. When this was happening, I was working in the back office department in one of the call centers. The back office department served several functions, but I had managed to find a niche in the department. I had become responsible for monitoring people's roaming usage when traveling outside of Canada and disconnecting them before they get bill shock. At the time, it was not uncommon to find news stories of people coming home from a trip and having a giant phone bill. And I was the sole person responsible for making sure that this didn't happen. Also, I worked part-time, 3 days a week. The supervisor of the back office department did not get along with me. He would constantly harass me. I was previously in the technical support department, where he was the supervisor when the harassment began. I eventually became frustrated with the way I was being treated and transferred away from technical support to back office, so that I could escape from the abuse I was receiving. A couple of months after I transferred, he transferred too and became my supervisor once again, and the abuse continued. I am not sure what I did to him, but we had an antagonistic relationship for as long as he was my supervisor. In 2014, my employer became one of the first carriers to offer unlimited USA roaming. You could pay $15 a month on top of your normal monthly plan and get unlimited roaming in the United States. They also had offered a trucker plan for $35 a month total that would have unlimited voice, SMS and data anywhere in North America. It was marketed directly to long-haul truckers. This add-on and plan were a pretty big deal, as other carriers were charging high prices for this. To my mind, monitoring USA roaming is no longer a high priority, as I can't disconnect people that have this add-on or appropriate plan because it's against the law. I continue to monitor roaming usage. Every time I see a user with a massive amount of data usage, I go into their account to confirm the existence of the add-on or a plan that would allow for this roaming usage. Once confirmed, I move on to the next account. My focus quickly starts to be on people traveling in Europe, Asia and Africa. There are fewer people roaming in those locations, as Canada doesn't share a land border with them, and the data roaming rate is a lot more expensive. This is going well for a couple of weeks, until my supervisor comes up and asks why I am not deactivating the accounts traveling in the United States anymore. I attempt to explain that I can't deactivate these customers as they have an appropriate plan or add-on, and if I were to do this, then the company would be in violation of the new laws. We have a back and forth about this, and the discussion ends when he says something to the effect of, "Just shut up and do what I told you." Alright, fine. If that's the way you want to do it, can you send me an email with those instructions please? Normally I would work at my normal work pace, but that day specifically I was flying through accounts. I am not sure how many people I deactivated. I was cutting people off left, right and center. I went home that night and knew that there would be fallout. And I felt incredibly guilty for negatively affecting the honest customers that were caught in the crossfire of my supervisor's BS. Because I was part-time and only working 3 days a week, I wouldn't see the fallout for 4 more days. When I got back to work, the situation was apparently complete chaos. The entire department had spent the 4 days that I was off trying to reactivate people, and they wouldn't be finished for a couple more days still. I had heard rumors that some people, important people, had threatened lawsuits and all sorts of other things as a result of being cut off while having the plans advertised with unlimited data in the USA. The supervisor tried to blame me, but I had the email and witnesses to our conversation to back me up. I don't know if the supervisor got in trouble over this incident. Nothing happened to me over this incident. But I do know that he was eventually promoted to being the general manager of the call center, and subsequently fired years later when we brought in a union over the bad working conditions. And with that, we end today's video. Let me know what you think about the stories. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the stories in today's video? I hope you enjoyed the video. If you like what I do and would like to support me, please subscribe and hit the like button. I hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Bye bye.